Hey y'all, Andrew Reed with Mossy Creek Mushrooms, and joining me as always is my ever loverly wife, Samantha.
Hey.
How are you all doing today? Because I'm doing swell. And by swell, I mean that I've been listening to Hank Williams Sr. today, courtesy of Jack. He's been blasting it in the office. I like me some Hank Williams Sr. All right, I'm going to pull you guys up here where I can see what is to see, and for some reason it doesn't seem like the live stream is starting for me here. There we go. Oh, definitely don't need that talk. All right, cool. Well, today, guys, I want to talk about contaminants. We have some pretty neat, like, I'm actually trying to use my actual video assets and stuff now. So, you know, I know the studio hasn't changed much, but, you know, we've got pictures like this one here. That's a cool picture, right? That's a cool photo.
I like its stripes. It's kind of structure right there.
I like it too.
It reminds me of those kind of candy cane radishes.
Candy cane radishes. Yeah, I can see that. What shirt are you wearing right now?
A Michi shirt.
Well, show it.
Courtesy of Chris Thompson.
You're going to have to lift yourself up a little bit.
Ta-da.
Amici! Your hair's in the way. There you go.
Sorry.
Cool. That's one of our restaurants.
Pizza, pasta, and beer.
Yeah, man. Chris is one of our chefs, and I guess he gives Samantha t-shirts. Why did I get a t-shirt?
He didn't have your size in stock.
It's because I'm a fatty. All right, fair enough. Anyways.
We'll trade him shirts, and then maybe we can get one.
Well, maybe I can get one. You know, us 2Xers are often left by the wayside. My goodness, we got quite a few people in today already. 24 just in the warm-up. Can't wait to see the microscope camera. So I've only got one set up today. It's this one right here. It is not going to be, well, I mean, like, we can go to it right now, but it's not showing anything yet. I am not a microscopist, but I am learning. So we do have some stuff that I'm hoping to show you. So, for instance, that plate that we just pulled up a moment ago, I'll pull it up again. That plate is the first one that we're going to take a look at underneath the microscope. So I've got the holes. Excuse me. I did not mean to do that in your all's ears. That was sudden. The old chest cold and stuff will not leave me. Anyways, that'll be the first picture that we take a look through the microscope. So, that said, contamination. It's terrible. I hate it. We deal with it on a regular basis, and I don't know a mushroom grower who doesn't. And
especially being in an older building.
Right.
Like we are. We're in a historical part of Jefferson City, and it's an older warehouse. I just saw the jumping spider climbing on that. Sorry. Distracted. It's cute.
he's on our key light here. So.
We've had a little friend just kind of, waving from afar over there on the anyway, but yeah, it is an older building. It's got some intense rafters. So Jackie's out there deep cleaning right now. It's something we do bi-weekly, if not, tri-weekly sometimes. And so it's difficult. It's hard for everyone.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, everybody's got their own set of contaminants they're going to deal with. Every op is different. For instance, when we moved into this op, and I wish I had some available, but we just tossed out a bunch. But before I even thought to do the live stream with the cameras, because Brian B. of Savior B. Mushrooms was the one who asked me to really dig into the...
Someone said don't have the green stuff.
Oh.
Sorry.
Anyways, he's the one that asked me to get into the microscope stuff. So that's what I'm doing today. Hopefully he'll be in and join us. I apologize for any coughing that you guys may come across in me today. My throat getting scratchy in the middle of a sentence or anything else, or some phlegmy coughs that you may not want to hear in your ears.
Everything is blooming.
Everything is blooming. and East Tennessee hates me, even though I love it to death. And spring, for some reason, even though it's like my second favorite season, spring is bound and determined to slowly suffocate me to death. So we'll get through this together.
Dogwoods are blooming right now, and redbuds, and the cedar trees, and just everything. Daffodils, tulips, all of it.
Everything.
Yep.
And I don't know which things are killing me, except I know that my allergies were really bad, and then they kind of settled off after the maples stopped blooming, and then now everything's blooming again. It's killing me. So I'm gonna get this first dish in here. Let's talk. So I pull this first one up here. I'm gonna let Samantha monitor the chat for us. So this is likely trichoderma, according to Cheryl. It is growing. You can see in a very dark green. It's got a pattern, that ring-like pattern. I have seen trichoderma do that as well, often in, I've seen it do this ring pattern before, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And it is actually relatively pretty when we pull it up on the microscope. So I guess let me do that real quick. We'll pull up camera 3, drop that image. I'm still learning this stuff, guys, so please forgive me for any mishaps we have here. But let's go down to the depths. Look at that. Switching over to, there we go. So that's 2 times on the top, on the bottom here. And look at that. That is actually quite pretty. I'm always kind of surprised at how beautiful Contamination is. Honestly, if I was trying to grow for pleasure, I'd probably just grow Contamination all the time and stare at it through the microscope because it's so freaking gorgeous.
We can get into the detergent business.
I'm okay with that. There are people that grow mold for a living. So we can see here where it's thicker, and there's a zone. Right here is where it meets the mycelium on that plate. So if we pull it up, that picture again, right there. Right here is where, you can't see my mouse, but you can see where the mycelium meets the mold.
Nice try.
Right. I was expecting these to be a little bit more intuitive than what they are. Now, if you look at it here, we can see where the mycelium is. It's very thread looking. The green is anything that's got color is a sporulating surface. So each one of those is a I forgot the name now. All of a sudden, it's the sexual reproducing part of the mold. I'll remember here in a minute. But this is exactly what you don't want on a plate. This zonation is really from, you can see how it zonates. That means that it has a bicycle. Good grief. It's got 2 ways of growing: a vegetative growth and a sexual reproducing phase. So as it grows, covers some ground, and then it'll produce sexual reproducing bodies again. And then it grows to cover some more ground. And again, as you can see on the plate here, there's really not, when it zonates, it's just a lighter, like this right here. See, there's a lighter spot, but it still has reproducing parts in it. But this is also, each one of these is going to contain hundreds of spores, if not thousands, if not millions, on this plate. And every time we disturb this plate, we're undoubtedly knocking some of these spores loose. Let's take a closer look. And of course, if anybody has any questions, let me know. I will do my best to answer what I can.
That gives me motion sickness.
I'm sorry, guys, if it gives you motion sickness.
Watching it zoom across the screen like that, and you're just barely tapping it across.
Yeah. There we go. These are an up-close view. I'm going to try to go slow so people got a chance to see them. Of the individual sporocarps? I can't remember. I should have had that book sitting right next to me. Quite pretty. You know, not what you want to see if you're trying to make money, but quite pretty all the same. I that dish. In fact, if I'll bring that back real quick, let's look at some of the myceliated parts here that are supposed, that look really clean.
I think it would be
But
really
look
awesome
right
to
there.
check out the part where the mycelium is overtaking the mold.
Well, it's actually not winning this fight on this plate.
That section.
Oh, okay. You want to look at that section. So, bringing the picture back up, Samantha wants to look. There's another colony off to the right that you can't see right here, where the mycelium is starting to take a foothold. So we'll take a look at that real quick. Everybody, the motion sickness is coming. All right, so here's the mycelium. And you can see where we're getting into the green. It's starting to be under the mycelium. The mycelium is starting to grow over that. Look at that. You can see these big, nice threads coming through. That white is mycelium coming from the main mat here. Man, I can barely touch that. And it's starting to grow over. And the interesting thing is the mycelium can actually grow over it and encapsulate this mold.
I've even seen it produce kind of metabolite to digest it and then continue to grow over itself.
Right.
Before.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, if it encapsulates it, it might make it a little bit easier to select from another portion of the dish. But as far as I'm concerned, this plate is pretty much screwed. And the reason why is there is a light scattering of mold all over the mycelial body. So no matter what you do, you can probably get this mycelium to grow, but it's always going to have that hitchhiker, unless you get somebody maybe Cheryl's skill set could save it. But not mine at this point, and not most cultivators that I know. It would be better just to throw that plate away. I also got that thread. So there's the mycelium growing over the spore-producing bodies. And it's just trying to take over ever so slightly. It is, if you look at it microscopically, it's definitely not
What are some series of
winning just yet.
actions that you could take to try to save it potentially?
To save that?
Mm-hmm.
So what I would do is I would do my, like you've seen me do lab work right here in the studio. And that is because I don't want to be anywhere where air is kicking up spores. So if I'm working with contaminants, it's almost always right here. Or if I'm working with koji, like the koji mold, because it is not a contaminant when I'm growing it. It could be very easily be contaminated on other plates. And what I would do is do the work right here where there is very little air flow. I would try to bump the dish as little as possible, and I would try to just make sure that I'm stirring the mold up, not at all, if I can help it. And then I would select, and any piece that I was able to select for, I would put mycelium side down. And what I'm trying to do is basically give the mycelium, which has more penetrative power than the mold, a chance to grow through the agar before the mold has a chance to. Mold also has penetrating power, unlike bacteria or anything, but it is not as good at it as mold. So what you could do is, so I would take my wedge, I would put it mycelium side down, or even cut. You've seen me cut the slits in a dish. I would lift one side up with a clean utensil and then slip that piece of agar underneath, and then basically try to bubble over it with clean agar. And then anything that I saw that grew out from the sides, I would immediately transfer it to a plate, hoping that one of them would not turn green. So,
Robert has asked, can it survive PC?
No, it shouldn't. It should not survive the pressure cooker. It can survive pressure cooking if your pressure cooker is operating suboptimally. We had a run of that here at the shop not too long ago. That's why we made the video about the autoclave tape. That was Cheryl's idea, being like, hey, you should tell people this because other people are going to have an issue with their pressure cookers as well, with the gauges. We were trusting the gauges just a little bit too much. So, yeah. Any other questions? Torment the mycelium. Call it bad names. To throw it across the room. Okay, I like this. Yeah. Let's keep going. His name is R Slicker. Samantha.
I don't know. It might
Did you get that?
It might like that. Good idea.
Did you see his name?
I did.
I like it. Hitchhikers are nightmare. Yeah, Lee, they really are. They are an absolute nightmare. It's one of the most embarrassing things that ever happened to me was there's a guy named Jay Schindler, Fungi for the People. I don't know if he's still around. He bred Elm Z from Elm A to be a heat-tolerant elm, and it changed the game on the elm oyster. Made it a supreme hot weather oyster. But it are you heading out? Okay, be safe.
Have Cheryl come and check things out.
Might. I'll let her know if I need if I've got a problem. Excuse me for the cough again. So, Jay asked me to send him a culture. I sent him one, and he's like, "Hey man, just want to let you know you had some mold underneath your mycelium. It's no big deal. I cleaned it up." And I was very like, "No man, it wasn't me. That it couldn't have been." He's like, "No, I'm telling you, man, I saw it. But look, don't be embarrassed. It happens." And I'm like, I just either couldn't believe it was me, or I didn't know enough and wasn't willing to admit where I was wrong at that time. And so I ended up getting really embarrassed because he was just trying to help me with my technique. And I was just kind of like, no, man, that wasn't, my work is good. Well, man, nobody cares if your work's good. Like, he was just trying to help me out, and I should have listened more. Now, oh, yeah, there we go. So Cheryl's talking about the water agar and quarter strength agar in the chat, which is a very good way to go as well. Mold actually survives water agar a little better than bacteria does. I usually use water agar for bacteria. I've not had as good of luck with it with mold. That doesn't mean somebody else wouldn't, though. Don't kink shame the contam. Fair enough, Cheryl. I'll try as best I can. So I've got another plate here. Oh, well, if I can find a place on the camera where you guys can see it. There we go. This is a liquid culture. No, this is a breeding dish. It was 2 pink cultures, and we thought that we had clean spore prints, and we'll just put it under the microscope where you can see it. I will tell you that this ended up being a really pretty contamination. So you can see here where the water ran. So the water from our spores. So we mixed the spores in the syringe and then put water droplets on the plate. And basically just let it run. And you can see that everywhere the water ran, the contamination happened, which means our spore prints were dirty. That's all it comes down to. There's a lot of reasons why your spore prints can be dirty, from bad technique to just those happen to get dirty in your grow room. If it's not a first flush oyster, it is oftentimes more contaminated than something that is not first flush. So, sorry, I see a question we got real quick. When do you change your HEPAs? I have a HEPA filter that I've been using since 2013. I don't change them. I change my pre-filters every month, though. Michael says, what's the specific name of the elm oyster you guys have for sale on your website? That would be the elm oyster that we have is Elm Z. And that's because I can't find anyone else who really started selling that. And as far as I saw back in the day, I've not checked recently, Jay Schindler just kind of disappeared off the face of the earth. So, now, let's get that removed. And we'll start driving down on this dish. Wait, let's get away from that light. You see these are very pretty. Kind of a very pretty green. It's almost like a Christmas plate. I don't actually know what mold this is. If I had to guess based on the light green and how it clumps like this, I'm going to guess penicillin. Again, I am no mold expert. I am barely a cultivation expert at this point. I've only been doing this for about 10 years, and so contamination, like the identification of molds, still escapes me, except very basic. Let's get a closer look at these guys, because I don't know what it is, and maybe it's just me, but I love the way these colonies look. If I can get to it. There we go. Look at that. It looks like a tribble from Star Trek. That's what it makes me think of. Now, interestingly enough, with microscopes, you've got a very, very narrow depth of field. This is why we're getting so much bokeh. You can see there in the center of that colony, it is fuzzy, and there's a ring that is much more clear that we can see the definition, and then outside of that, it gets all fuzzy again. That is because we've got a very, very narrow depth of field on the what's up, Ben? On the microscopes. Now, if you have seen people that have taken photos of microscopic images that look very clear, and you've got a very nice depth of field, that is something called photo stacking. And focus stacking. Thank you, Ben. And the cool thing about focus stacking is I can drive right up here to the top, get that in, as clear as I can get it, snap a photo. Then you just go down a little bit, snap a photo, another little turn, snap a photo, another little turn, snap a photo, down and through the rest of them. Then you can put them in a program like Photoshop and tell it to focus stack. And it will automatically take the sharpest parts of every image and then stack those into a three-dimensional looking image. And it will give you a very good depth of field at that point, and you can see things very clearly. This is great for making illustrations and other things that people do. So we do have some questions here. Let me go through them real quick. I've never seen a banana catch mold. They do seem to go bacterial first, don't they? Thoughts on using hydrated lime and agar? I'm thinking it can help make conditions less hospitable to contaminants when working with a dirty culture. That changing the pH could work. You could just use a pH changer, but it's possible that could help. I've always thought that sterile technique is better than any sort of chemical that you can use, though you could use chemicals to add to your abilities. At least my level of HEPAs are still very expensive. Any tips to prolong the life of one? Yeah, get some really fine, like allergen filters. Like N95 is the quality of what we're using right now. It's actually better than N95. I think it's like almost P100 or whatever. But our pre-filters get changed every month, and we have a hired service that comes in and changes the filter for our central unit, and then for both of our HEPA filters. And that will prolong your life. They say that the filters are only supposed to last like 5 years or something like that. You can do plate testing and lighter testing to check flow rate and contamination. But honestly, if your HEPA filter is working, I don't see a problem in using it, especially if you're running allergen filters or something better to pre-filter. Now, that is, as far as I can tell, penicillin mold. And again, I am just absolutely in love with these little colonies that look like tribbles. They are just as insidious as tribbles are, and probably not as tasty. Let's see. Reply to water agar. Why not use all the time, or does mycelium struggle through it? Yeah, it's because it's basically no nutrition. You're starving your contaminants out. mycelium's got fat reserves that it can work off of, and those fat reserves, so to speak, I mean, it's not truly fat reserves, but they have storage. They can continue to produce and grow and search for food. What you're doing is you're starving it, searching for food, and then you can, like, as it's growing, you can cut off the tips where it has gone past the contamination, because the contamination cannot search for food the way mycelium can, because it doesn't have the same kind of reserves. Bacteria must basically eat and live where it is at. It does not have a very good ability to go anywhere like mycelium does. That's the trouble with tribbles. Oh, man. You're going to get Star Trek-y on me. All right, so the third plate I've got here for you guys is a split plate. This is why I use food coloring in my dishes. And this side is clean. That right there. This side is dirty. And look at that. The dirty side, the food coloring did not get eaten. It is obvious to me. I mean, it was obvious to me now because of the sporulating, but this was obvious to me long before I saw stuff sporulating that it was going to be contaminated. That said, this was one of the only dishes we had of this type, so we did select from it to try to save it. I hope we did, because the frozen lookout oyster is something I've been wanting to grow for a very long time, because it was found on the frozen lookout trail. But that is a good reason to use food coloring. I know people say that professionals don't use food coloring. Cheryl is a professional, has been a professional since before I hired her. She now uses food coloring, and it's because we do. And then I use food coloring. It has its uses. Anyone who says professionals don't probably isn't much of a professional themselves, or is newly a professional, and they're very worried about the way people think about them. Let's go to the third plate here. There you go. You can see the split. This is the contaminated side on the top there, and the uncontaminated side on the bottom where we sectored from. And you can see the mold and the mycelium both are growing up the border, but that border did its job and kept things separate for long enough that we could select from them. So let's see. I thought I saw a question on here. I'm trying to go. Mycopene versus orange bacteria under the scope would be cool. So Toby, for that, I'm going to need to use the compound scope, which I do not have set up yet today with a camera on it. So we can get to that on another live stream for sure. Okay. And then, oh, sorry, John Grady, it looks like you got a question too. I've been reusing agar from contaminated plates. I usually cut out the mold and boil down and PC the agar again to reuse. I feel like if I'm willing to spend the time, it should work fine. I mean, that you can test it, man. If it works, then it works. It's not something I would do. Agar is cheap enough that I would just buy more. Go get Hoosier Hill agar. Hoosier Hill agar, you can buy it in like 5-pound increments for really cheap on Amazon. So that's a great place to go. Now, with this plate, we do have it under the microscope. And this is the mold. And that is, oh, that's because we're looking at it through a water droplet. That's why it's all, there you go. And this one's actually a much harder one to get through the microscope, I noticed earlier.
Oh dear. Stream gone. Yeesh. Oh. Well, do you want to get out there and reset the...
Mm-mm.
But I don't mind. We humans get so impatient these days.
Okay, so what I'm going to do, Samantha, is I'm going to try to hard reset it real quick.